Hi, Bernhard.
Hi, Carsten.
Another day, another series, right?
Right. So now we are doing a hybrid workload series about full workload that's running on Azure Stack HCI, and it's Azure Virtual Desktop.
Yeah. So in the first part, we do a bit an overview. What is AVD? And some important information, but don't be scared. We will do a lot of demos on screen. Only the first video is a bit what's about and how you some background information. So, and Bernhard prepared a slide deck for that, but maybe we should say some words about us first, right, Bernhard?
Yep.
Who are you? What are you doing?
My name is Bernhard Frank. I'm based out of Germany. I work for Microsoft in the Azure FastTrack team. My goal is to help customers with their Azure related projects. And my specialty is Azure Stack HCI and also Azure Virtual Desktop. And this series brings both worlds together. And I'm trying to share some knowledge with you. What about you, Carsten?
Yeah. My name is Carsten Rachfahl. I'm a Microsoft MVP for Cloud and Data Center Management. I always call this group the on-prem group, and I'm also an Azure MVP. So I do a lot of Azure Stack HCI installations, storage spaces direct installations, and Hyper-V, and also train this stuff. Train people to learn about this stuff. And I'm also based in German, so bear with us. We decided to do this series in English, but there will be some hiccups in the language. We are better in German than in English, but I think so the audience is a bit broader. If we would do it in Germany, it's not so useful for many people, and we learned with our first series that there is a lot of interest out there from a lot of countries, right, Bernhard? Maybe you refer to the series.
That's
you have
true.
a nice slide
I
there,
have,
right?
yes, I have the link in the slide deck. So maybe bring up this one. So we did a previous series to this one. So if you happen not to have seen it before, this is the one, right? So where we have set up the infrastructure right from the bare metal. So if you're interested in what kind of hardware we were using or we are using, have a look at that YouTube link. It's containing the full list for setting up the cluster that you see here on that picture.
Yeah, so I have to add, of course, we have 2 times the videos online on the channel of the Azure FastTrack team. That's the link here. And I also have the videos online on my YouTube link. So if you either use this link or search for Carsten Rachfahl YouTube, and you will find the series with some other webinars and stuff around the topics we are handling here. So go on, Bernhard. This is your video.
Okay, no worries. So first of all, because we might, not everyone watching this might have a full picture of Azure Virtual Desktop or might have used it in Azure before. So I'll give you a brief introduction of Azure Virtual Desktop, what it's been using for, and what the idea is, right? So usually, Azure Virtual Desktop is a solution for remote desktop workers, right? It's a VDI platform, a virtualized desktop platform, hosted or meant to run in the cloud, providing services, desktops to everyone, right? And there are some things that you might be familiar from your own terminal server farm that you are running, no matter which technology that you are using. Right. So I'll talk a little bit about the different components. So if you would use Azure Virtual Desktop, you'll have an Azure subscription. You also have the Microsoft data centers, the Microsoft infrastructure, right? So the cloud, the data centers all over the world, which provide you Hyper-V servers, storage, and networking, right? So that's all managed by Microsoft. Then there is something in a terminal server farm that usually you would need to set up, which is, you need to take care about the load balancing. You need to take care about, the gateways, the web access to the desktops. And these are, usually server roles sitting on a Windows server, for example, if you would use RDS or different server technologies, if you would use different technologies, right? In AVD, that's taken care of by Microsoft, right? So you are using it, but you don't update it, you don't, sort of manage it, you don't install it. So that's, the benefit of it, because you don't have to care about it. But there are things that you need to take care about, which are the desktops themselves, right? So the virtual machines hosting the operating system, you decide which operating system to choose, right? So it could be a Windows Server operating system with a GUI interface there, with your server-like applications on there, or whatever you are familiar with, or you could use a Windows client operating system to be hosted for either single users, like in a VDI scenario, one-to-one mapping, right? Or, using a desktop that is shared amongst a lot of users, like a pooled scenario, right? And therefore, we have that Windows multi-session image, right? Which is quite interesting in order to do a good economy of scale, to make better use of the hardware. This is something that you need to take care about, and it's running in your subscription, right? In your Azure subscription. And then you need to take care of a lot of other things, right? So how is that image updated? How do I get the application into the desktop? What size of VM do I use in order to have a good performance for the user, and yada, yada, yada. Yeah. So that's the things that you still care about as an Azure Virtual Desktop administrator, right? There are some other things that I don't want to, talk too much in detail about. However, be sure that you probably have some connection, some private connection from Azure where your desktops are to on-premise where maybe, some other resources are that you need to talk to, right? Because you do have a client-server application where the client runs in Azure and the server runs on-premise. Maybe not an ideal perspective from a latency thing, right? So you would usually try to put these things together in order to have the best performance. But yeah, there might be cases where you still have some, hybrid networking.
Yeah, but to be clear, Bernhard, everything of this is running in Azure. So it's a cloud-based solution, except the clients. So the computer where you access the remote desktop.
Yes.
That is not in the cloud. Correct. That's on your desktop. But the rest is in the cloud, and most of it is cared about from Microsoft. So you don't have to care about the Azure Virtual Desktop services. Microsoft does that for you, right?
Yeah, that's true. So the client could be sitting anywhere, right? So in having an internet access, for example, or even it's possible via a private network would also be possible to connect to your desktops. But usually, the client is, different device. It could be a Mac, it could be an Android phone, it could be a Windows computer. Trying to access or accessing the desktop, which is hosted in your subscription in any data center in Azure where you want it to, right? However, right, so with Azure Stack HCI, things change, right? Because not everything fits or would be ideal to be hosted in Azure, right? So let's think about it. Basically, there are still people out there that have bad internet connection, right? So then it's no use to put the desktop in Azure if you have a very thin and very high latent network to it, right? So you may want still to host close to the users on premise, or you might still be, have data sovereignty issues where you say, hey, I might use the desktop in Azure, but my database with all the data, I don't allow it to be run in Azure, right? It needs to be on premise by law, sort of, right? And then you have that, separated network. And that might not be ideal as well, right? Because you do a lot of database calls and that would always travel over the network. So you want to have things sitting together, right? And for these scenarios, it would be ideal to have a solution where you can host the whole solution on premise. And that's now possible with Azure Stack HCI.
Yeah, Bernhard, can I add something here? Because
Mhm.
these are the two typical scenarios that a Microsoft employee thinks of when, for reasons why you don't put something in Azure, right?
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
know you are from the Azure FastTrack team, so of course you know these reasons, but there are maybe some other advantages
Mhm.
that we will see. For example, Azure is a all-purpose cloud. So
Mhm.
you can do anything there, but it's not optimized for small things like, let's say,
Mhm.
performance of disks. You can have very performant disks, but they are very
Mhm.
expensive.
Mhm.
On premises, you can deliver high performance and it's not so expensive. And
Mhm.
you have low latency. So there are maybe other reasons why you want to have
Mhm.
Azure Virtual Desktop based VMs or services in Azure Stack HCI. Yeah?
Yeah, let me add
Performance is
maybe.
one, maybe
Oh,
cost is one. Do
yeah.
you have others?
Yeah, it might be, like if you have graphic intensive workloads, right? So the
Good one.
users are
Yeah.
designing stuff, right? And they need to have a GPU in order to have a good performance, right? And you want to make use of it, but your closest Azure data center doesn't provide you with GPUs. That's still the case, right? In a lot of areas. And then you can think of, building your hardware with GPU-based graphic cards in it and provide these functionality on-premise, close to the user. That might be a use case as well, right? Yeah, and that's, but you can still have the best of both worlds. I mean, it
Mhm.
doesn't need to be, one or the other. It could be a combination of both because, you could still, for special use cases, use HCI, and for the generic use cases you could, or for the mass use cases, or for the high scale down, scale up, you could still use Azure, for example,
Mhm.
because, the management for AVD is mostly done on Azure, right?
Mhm.
There are some things that you still need to do on HCI itself as an admin there, a lot of things still, but over the time when this solution matures, you will be seeing a lot of stuff moving to Azure as well from a
Yeah,
management perspective.
and you said a very important point. We are now in August
Mm-hmm.
2023.
Yep.
AVD or Azure Virtual Desktop for Azure Stack HCI is still in preview. So if you watch this series later, they will be a lot of changed depending on when you
Yeah.
watch it. Bernhard
Yeah.
and I, we know that, but we thought still provide you with information how you can set up Azure Virtual Desktop on premises because it's a very promising technology, and there's always change in Azure. So there's maybe not ever the right time to do a series that
Mm-hmm.
will last for years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to start with the stuff, this is the point.
Yeah. So, and we also we'll do what in the series. Either we'll kick out the stuff that is obsolete, or we will add later on the stuff that is when it's time to talk about. Right. But
Okay.
first of all, for this series, we'll try to do that stuff that won't change soon, right? So that it's still worth watching, right? Don't be afraid of the things or the knowledge that you gain from this series will be in vain, or soon be obsolete. So that shouldn't be the case, right? Okay, so that's still what the idea of that slide is, that nevertheless, if you have the desktop now sitting in Azure or now on Azure Stack HCI, the idea of AVD is still to have a centralized management from the Azure portal.
Mhm.
It's not fully implemented yet. There are still some things of improvement, as we said before, and some things will change. But in over the time, that's the idea, to have everything, or at least most of the stuff to be centralized managed in Azure. For example,
Yeah.
what already works is the monitoring piece, right? So monitoring is using the same portal, the same single pane of glass approach. You would be able to see the monitoring data of your desktops, how much time the user takes, for example, to log on. In both ways, it would be the same user experience, right? Okay, maybe let's try to keep it to an end for that session and try to go into production. But there is one thing for the series. Basically, for using or for implementing Azure Virtual Desktop on Azure Stack HCI, there are two ways to do it right now. So you will probably have seen the right-hand side, the right way, or the thing on the right, which is the official documentation, where you are seeing a lot of stuff that tries to automate the things. However, it has also some prerequisites, and these prerequisites will change relatively soon. So we decided to do the left-hand side of way, which is the more manual approach. Right?
Maybe can I add something here?
Yeah.
I know you are a bit cautious here because you are from Microsoft. I'm not so cautious. Only what I'm risking is my MVP award. So the right side is with the Azure Resource Bridge, and we use the Azure Resource Bridge, and it's in preview. So there are days you can deploy it with Azure Resource Bridge or the Azure Resource Bridge, and there are days that where you will have some problems. And we have some information that change is coming here, so it will be there will be a lot of change. So we decided to take the manual way. It will be valid also with the new resource bridge, or in a year, or in 2 years, or whatever, maybe. So the manual part is also helpful, that you understand what you are doing. If you do the automatic way, a lot of stuff is automatically downloaded, and we want to give you some more information here and some more freedom, right, Bernhard?
Yeah, so the beauty of the manual approach is you would understand the basic components of AVD on HCI, what needs to be done, or what the automated way does anyway, right? And you can, you fully understand, in case there goes anything wrong, you would be better able to troubleshoot the whole solution, right? So right-hand side will be coming, will be updated. Left-hand side should be there for quite a while. So depending on whatever choice you like, choose either way. However, for the next part of the series, we will concentrate on the left-hand side, and as soon as the automated way is stable enough, and then we'll hopefully provide another solution. So that should be it for the slide deck. And now I want to just give you a short introduction of what the manual way would look like, because we will then, do a separate video on the individual steps. I don't want to go into much detail here, but these steps are, prescribed on my GitHub repository. They also contain some code pieces, right? There are some prerequisites we already have, which is a valid HCI cluster, which is registered with Carsten's Azure subscription. We also do have Azure Active Directory. We also do have a classic AD, a classic domain, which is synced with Azure Active Directory. That's a prerequisite. And the first video will be about, the downloading of the image from the Azure Marketplace, right? Because we want to host a Windows 11 multi-session image on our Azure Stack HCI. And the way where we get it is from the Azure Marketplace, and this is the next video. Okay.
So see you in the next video, right?
Yep.